All right, what's up, haters? It's me, Jamie Taylor. I'm in the studio, and it's the usual suspect, my co-host, Kendall Grooms. Hey, Kendall.
Hey, Jamie.
And we have a very special guest in the studio today, Mr. Andrew Adkins. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Jamie.
Welcome. What are you thinking right now?
Thinking I did this once. Why am I doing this again?
Because it's a different show and a different platform, and Kendall and I both deal in a familiar industry. The title of the show, I Hate Real Estate, is actually not because we hate real estate. It's actually because we all loved it at some point. And like we've talked about on the show, all is fair in love and real estate. Some bad things can happen. Right, Kendall? Mm-hmm. Right, Andrew?
Correct.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, we're going to talk about you because you have been on the show before. And you are responsible for running one of the largest title companies by volume in Pulaski County, or probably in the state, right?
Maybe in the state. Definitely in Pulaski County. We are the market share leader for sure.
Okay, well, that's American Abstract Title Company and the guy who's constantly running around town dealing with all kinds of things related to title. So just real quick before we get into the nitty gritty and we can analyze and assess some of the things that you've seen in your career. Why title anyways? I mean, explain that piece of the real estate transaction. For those of you who are new to real estate or perhaps very, lackadaisical in your job and don't pay attention to the title part. Tell me about title and what it means to the real estate transaction.
Title insurance is a required portion of the transaction. Anytime money is being borrowed, your lending institution is going to require you to see a title insurance agent or an attorney that issues title insurance to secure their mortgage interest in the property. So I'm kind of bound by necessity.
But you're also really super important because property can be owned by multiple people in multiple ways. And when the title transfers, it's your job to figure out kind of chain of command, what happened, who owns it, right? Right?
Figure out is probably a really good broad statement. What we do is we take the public record and we break it down and see who actually has an interest in the property and then present that for review. And then we use attorney-drawn docs to transfer title from the owners to who the new purchaser will be.
So basically you work in tandem.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So what happens if, and then this is just kind of for my knowledge, he said attorney-drawn docs. I'm assuming that his documents are just they're just standard documents that you use all the time now, right? At the creation and the inception of the business, you created these standard documents that you use, or do you every single time draft a new agreement, or what is that process like? When I show up, the work's done. When I show up, it's like, here's the stack of documents that your seller's going to sign. And so my first few years in real estate, I really didn't pay attention to the intricacies of what the title business does. So that's why I was curious how that works together.
We use attorney-drawn docs to transfer title on every transaction that we do. So our specific outside counsel has prepared quitclaim deeds, special warranty deeds, and the only information provided by the title company is legal description, grantor, grantee, and your notary information, which fills out the acknowledgement.
Okay, is he telling the truth, the whole truth?
I mean, there's going to be times, I'm sure, in his business that there are special circumstances that come up with certain transactions where an attorney may have to create a specific document or revise a certain document in order to get something closed properly.
Right.
Especially in a more complex transaction.
There's a situation where there's shared property agreements or divorce settlement agreements. Or...
Yeah. I mean, you can have it in complex commercial litigation, or not litigation. You can tell what I do. Commercial transactions. You can have it in that.
Probate situations.
Probate. Yeah. We've done plenty of cleanup for quiet title when they find you can't actually have title. There may be a situation where you can go file a quiet title action, quiet it in the names of the persons that are attempting to sell it. You have to go through that process. There's all kinds of different reasons and circumstances where an attorney could have to be involved because there's something not 100% ordinary in the transaction.
Right. And shared interest comes up. And so, okay, I've dealt with a lot of different transactions over the years, but there's been some that we've talked about on the show. We've kind of go back and analyze what happened. And essentially how we've done that on the past is we've been what did the person know that's involved with the case? Okay, what happened in the case that they bring to Kindle or that we find out about? And then who knew what was going on at this time? And then what did they do about it? And so kind of before the show we were recording, I was explaining to you a situation that happened to me before, and it was well, whose fault is it? And that's kind of part where we've been breaking it down. And a lot of times you find that it's typically a misinformed person or someone with ill intention, but it all depends on the case. And so some of the things we want to talk about, I'm curious if you have any stories where a surprise pops up or something crazy happens happen? Because we all know that, again, things happen in real estate that don't get shown on HGTV, right? And we're not trying to put a negative light on the industry. We're trying to provide additional information and value to consumers and people in the industry about what can happen if you're not properly informed, do not have the right information, and or dealing with the wrong players in the game. So do you happen to have any examples of anything that's ever gone crazy in a title deal?
I think if I repeated the one from 3.5 or 4 years ago, a lot of people would giggle. So maybe not get to that one yet. We'll hold that one as a bullet.
That'll be our ace in the hole.
I like it.
So you have anything new? I mean, this market's crazy. Tell me something has nuts happened in the last 18 months.
Well, as what you described is, what goes wrong. I think what goes wrong is lack of communication. In the scenario that you were asking, did a commitment get out? Did a commitment get reviewed by the players, the listing agent, the selling agent, the buyers, the sellers? Have they seen the fact that there was additional requirements? I mean, if you're communicating and there's something wrong with the file, once everyone realizes that it's wrong, you can carry it over to a seasoned veteran like Kendall and say, I need your assistance with this. That was a simple fix if it was communicated properly. Kendall could throw that document together in 2 minutes and that file's slam dunk home run.
Well, what we're talking about is in a situation where the title company put a quitclaim deed together, included it in the package without communicating it to the agent.
Communication.
So, just full disclosure, you're correct. That communication certainly would have helped the situation. But as a title company, and you can kind of speak to this, I'm sure, but do you even have any right to go to a client and say, you have to sign this? Because that was my first question, is I was like, can you make them sign it? Can you make them sign it? Because really it feels like you should make them sign it.
Well, I would think in your situation, if there was a divorce decree that stated the quitclaim deed was a requirement, that would be a court order that they needed to transfer their title to their ex-husband or ex-wife, whichever way that was going.
They put that in there to hope that she would sign it. The main thing was, you can tell them the story, basically.
So the divorce decree didn't call for a quitclaim deed?
No.
Okay.
The divorce decree just said that they would retain the interest. I don't think it said anything.
It had
about
a property
it.
settlement agreement
Yeah.
where if he ever sold it.
Yeah, if he ever sold it, they would split the proceeds. But there was nothing in there about anybody signing a deed, none of that.
So 6 years goes by, and I, list and sell the house, and it's under contract, and we get ready to go to closing, and I call to check on the title commitment and make sure everything's done. And they're like, yeah, sure, everything went out. And they just mention, and a quitclaim deed was in there, so don't worry about that. And I was like, I'm sorry.
Ouch.
Why is there a quitclaim deed in there? And the answer was, well, because there was a property settlement agreement. I'm like, did anyone want to tell me about this? Because I didn't know that. I also have no contact with the ex-wife. I don't think he does either, and I don't think she's going to sell it.
Was she in title?
Sure enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure enough. So that's what we're talking about, those kind of issues. How does your team combat that kind of stuff? And of course, everyone makes mistakes. There's good days, there's bad days. But in this particular situation, communication obviously is something you guys pride yourself on and do well at. But it's something that lack of communication really adversely affected the deal. And that can happen just with that small fact, because that is what happened. They never closed. Could never go to closing because she wouldn't agree to sign. And he couldn't do it if she took her half of the proceeds.
I think the key to that transaction, and we're all guilty of it because the industry is so wild and crazy and busy right now, is the fact that no one has time to get that commitment in advance. I say no one except us.
Yeah.
We try to turn our commitments in a matter of days and not a matter of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We don't deliver a commitment to a seller, a buyer, a lender
With a backup plan?
with 48 hours to go before closing.
That's good, because you probably know this trend right now with COVID, issues with courthouses, access to records, things like that. It's turned from a situation where a standard contract used to say you're going to have a title commitment within 10 days of executing a contract or turning it over to the title company to establish the escrow. And now I'm getting requests when I draft a contract that it's 30 days or 60 days at some title companies before they can even issue a commitment.
We see that statewide, and I'm doing more and more work outside the realm of Central Arkansas, outside the realm of Pulaski, Saline, Lone Oak. I'm being pulled into some of the smaller communities because they really do have 6 to 8 weeks hold time. They can't get to it.
Lone Oak and Prairie County are two of the ones that I've specifically had issues with, especially Prairie County. I had a big transaction we were putting together in Prairie County, and they were limiting the courthouse to 15 minutes per title company per day to do search. And so that's all you had. You had nothing. I mean,
Well,
they were getting nothing done.
Well, you brought up a whole nother complexity, so let's just get that cat out of the bag too when it comes to COVID, because, when this whole thing started, I went home the week of March 11th, I want to say, pregnant, 7 months pregnant with this baby who's now 14 months old. And since that time, so much has changed in our industry. And at first we were kind of on the outside of it. They were really concerned more about like restaurants and hairdressers and things like that. And then it became associated also with real estate. And I have to say, there are some things that have changed with title that I wish I could close every file as easy as some of that has become, and direct deposit with checks through brokerages and things like that, conveniences that have been pretty cool, that were good pivot points. But talk to me about your experience, both of you, because we never really even talked about that either in any episode, of what that felt like to all of a sudden, boom, our whole industry has been affected by it. How have you pivoted, and what are you experiencing now?
Well, we're experiencing a little bit of slide back to what we felt in March of 2020, which is I have more people present with masks, vaccinated or unvaccinated, and we honor their wishes. And if they're vaccinated, we're wearing a mask right in conjunction with them. I did a little math, and I got out the pencil and paper and added up, and I had about 4,500 to 5,000 people come between me and the closing table between March of 2020 and when I got vaccinated in late April of 2021. Mask up. I did not do a single closing without a mask on.
Still scary though.
Not for a friend,
Yeah,
not
it's
with
still
her family,
scary though,
not anyone.
because you had also no idea like what variants would come behind that, or what kind of other things
Carry
now.
a pair of stents in my heart, so obviously I need to be very careful.
We have another title company in our building who will not be mentioned on the show, but I remember we moved in September of 2020 into this building, and they had two big white tents in the parking lot, and they were doing closings in the parking lot. And then eventually, when the market went crazy, they were doing enough closings in the parking lot that I'd look out there on a Friday afternoon. I mean, as you know, there's a lot of closings on people want to move over the weekend, and it's not even a drive-through. They're standing out there, window open on one side, pouring down rain, trying to get documents signed in the car, verifying that people are who they say they are. I mean, you're showing up in a car, you still got to get driver's license verification. You got to have a notary watching people sign various documents and all kinds of things. It was crazy.
And still explain the documents to a fact of, hey, your interest rate's 3.25 as you scream at them through the half-cracked window.
Yeah, I watched a closer that both you and I would know if I brought up his name, and he's standing out there one day in a driving rainstorm with a stack of papers this high trying to hold an umbrella and explain to these people what's going on.
Multiple times, Kendall, yes.
Yeah. Our industry, the legal industry, it changed.
Don't talk about it, but
it changed. It changed because, from my standpoint of litigation, it shut down. I mean, there were no jury trials. There were hardly any courtrooms because
I don't want to live with a litigation attorney during COVID when you can't argue. Carrie, we love you.
Yeah, we just argue with each other. That's right. But even if you have a judge that has any kind of medical problem, medical history, anything, they're not going to hold court. Period. And so, in a way, though, I benefited because I'm licensed in Oklahoma and Texas as well, and not having to travel there, we had so many different Zoom hearings and hearings on other platforms and things like that it saved clients that I had a situation available. It saved them a bunch of money in travel time and preparation and things like that. So it wasn't all bad for us. We ended up doing a lot of transactional work during COVID that came our way as well, since the courtrooms were shut down. So we were okay.
Well,
but it changed the legal industry a lot, and I think some of it will stick. Some of these remote hearings that judges can just do real quick, jump on the computer real fast. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because with closings, it's a little bit different because you have to be who you are and say who you are, show your identification. How have you dealt with some of that? I mean, I guess you do remote closings in the sense that you send packages places, but they're still citing in the presence of a notary. Do you think that's ever going to be something that can be done remotely?
It is done remotely.
It is.
How?
They're
both like lessons. This has never happened to me. I'm there with my client.
I actually did a lot of research recently on e-notary in Texas because I have a client who does a lot of DocuSign documents, probate work, things like that in Texas. And, when you do probate work, it requires all kinds of verifications, affidavits, things like that have to get filed. And he had me investigate into whether or not the people in his office could notarize remotely under the Texas e-notary rules. And you can't because you have to be a resident of Texas, and he lives in Oklahoma. But a lot of states are adopting that if you're a notary public in this state, you can apply for a special e-notary license and comply with their requirements. I haven't done it for Arkansas. You probably have, because it impacts your business a lot more than it does mine, because usually a client comes in and signs mine if they're local. But I know you're dealing with remote closings. You've been dealing with people moving here from out of state, site property never even seen moving here from out of state, that kind of thing going on. So You probably know more about what Arkansas is doing than I do.
The governor signed into force. We have remote online notarization, and as of 45, 60 days ago, through a platform of remote online notarization, you can virtually sign buyers and sellers.
Is that a state-run program, or is it a
Ron is
third-party?
not. Ron is a third party.
Okay.
Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are accepting of it, and then we have a good group of lenders that have already moved that way and allow us to do such.
Is there a subscription cost with it?
There is.
That is a very exciting.
Still not a bad deal.
It's not a bad deal.
No, that's a very exciting for me, and that's
I would have told you it was 7 or 8, 9, 10 years out, and COVID brought it all to the forefront. And we are now performing.
See, in our industry, it happened very similar to you wanting to get notaries. We've got a pandemic. People are dying from it. People are getting sick. People want to protect their families. As an attorney, they want to do estate planning. They want to get a will in place. There were legitimately people out there that were terrified for their lives for months of going anywhere. And
some
those
people were
want to
in the hospital making those plans over the phone.
The testamentary requirement. Yeah, there's the testamentary requirements in Arkansas. Yes, and they had the proclamation about having to have 2 disinterested witnesses and a notary to sign all these documents, and you have a proclamation allowing us standards where we can do that in a remote setting via Zoom and other things. Now it wasn't just anybody could hop on there on Zoom and do it, but
and that was limited to his field as far as notarizing real estate documents. And there's not a title insurer in the state of Arkansas that was going to allow that.
Right.
Now I had some competitors that did it, but there wasn't an insurer that would have approved that.
I'm sorry to interrupt this riveting conversation, but it's time for a word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by American Abstract and Title Company. Not only does this place handle most of the real estate transactions that go down in Pulaski County, but they do it with professionalism, and no one has more energy than their fearless leader, Andrew Adkins. If you have any concerns whatsoever about your title work, bring your file over to American Abstract Title and know it's going to close on time and in style. I have used American Abstract Title for more than one transaction in my real estate career, and they are not one of the reasons why I host a show called I Hate Real Estate. Remember, at the end of the day, we don't really hate it, we're actually great at it. So, my friend Andrew Adkins and American Abstract Title is the place for you to close your business. This episode is brought to you by Campbell & Grooms Law Firm. This small law firm has the tenacity to go after the big guy when your HGTV situation doesn't turn out so great. Remember, we started this show for a reason, and these guys know what to do when things turn upside down. Donald Campbell and Kendall Grooms are the Arkansas Trial Lawyers Association Trial Lawyers of the Year for 2019-20, and I'm pretty sure 21's in the bag. Well, what's interesting about what you said about 9 years down the road and thinking it came to the forefront overnight was that, for me, when I was stepping sort of more away from real estate, now again, I'll always stay licensed and stay involved in some degree, but I have been less informed about some of the advances that have taken place due to the fact that I'm not fully in the market every day. Now, so when you mentioned that, same way, I thought it was going to be a minute down the road, and I figured there'd be an app, and there'd be one app that came out and crushed it like everybody, like happens, and they would come out and make it easy for buyers and sellers to buy and sell online and notarize those documents, and that's always been, for me, in my mind, a big holdup, and now we can.
It's here.
So then let's go ahead and
Done.
let's couple that up with Arkansas historically doesn't have high highs, doesn't have low lows, and right in the middle of COVID, like boom, all these property value spikes. All of a sudden people are moving here from out of state. Tell me about that, Andrew, because we've talked about some crazy things that have happened. I'm sure you've seen people come here sight unseen. Like, what's the craziest thing you've seen as far as walking into a closing?
I had a young couple purchasing a home in West Little Rock. They were moving from just outside of Fayetteville, maybe like Farmington. They had gotten an offer 3 weeks before on their home, and they had 82 additional offers. So they had 83 offers. So they had 83 offers to go through. So their listing agent had to build the magical spreadsheet and say, net. Here's your top one.
Agent made the money on that one.
Yeah, I would have been like, so what can I do? Do you want to move out like 3 weeks after? Do you want us to come over and like move all your stuff for you? Yeah. That's been the big thing I've seen. Have you seen any crazy contingencies?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I had a friend that they put a 1,400 square foot starter home in Maumelle on the market and got 45 offers on it, 44, 45.
That makes
and
sense
half
though.
of them,
Starter
half of
home
them
too,
are
because
sight unseen.
exactly, they're coming from out of area sight
This one
unseen.
wasn't. Those are the ones that get me. The ones that will agree to get a home.
You're an
that will
attorney.
agree.
They all get you when
Well,
they sign
no,
something.
I'm saying though, they'll offer $20,000 above market price. They'll do a sight unseen, no inspection requirement, and they'll waive
No
all
appraisal.
contingencies.
Right.
And no
Okay,
appraisal. Yeah,
there
no
we go.
appraisal.
They said it. They said the magic word. Okay, they said appraisal. We get to go there. That's the thing. I know there's going to be a lot of crazy contingencies, and I know you've probably seen some nuts. People are probably like, I'll give you this painting that I got I'll leave it in my house. But the appraisal contingency, for me, is the craziest thing I've seen in this market. And I know it's happening all over the country, and it's happened historically in the past before high highs or low lows. But tell me that you're not like sitting there going, now, are you sure you want to sign this? I mean, do you feel confident when you're handing them over, when you're looking at that with a client?
I think the access to social media and the access to media alone has really opened the eyes to a lot of people, and they understand that in this market, you're probably paying a little more than it's worth, but you're the first one to pay more. That now becomes what, Jamie? A comp. Mm-hmm. So the guy next door is not necessarily
I just
selling
need 3
more.
to 5 of my neighbors to get the same
Right.
deal.
Well, and
Right.
what you got to hope is that it doesn't create a bubble like what happened 15 years ago.
And that's where I want to, bring it on home to, again, with Arkansas. It's just such a unique position. And most of our listener base is here in the state. But if you're out of the state and you're listening to the show, it's so interesting because, again, that lack of high and low back in 2008 and 9 when the market just went crazy. And I'm moving from Vegas to Arkansas as it's happening. So I'm watching people lose massive amounts of money on huge investments. And people in Arkansas at a max were losing, 10 to 10%. I didn't see a lot more than 10% when I moved here.
Depends on which neighborhood.
Exactly. And also depends on the investor, their portfolio, et cetera. Geographical competence is a big one. But I moved to a different part of the state, too, which focused mostly on agriculture. All this being said, I look back and remember thinking that what drove me in the appraisal industry when I was working hand in it was I wanted consumers, to understand that this is the tool that tells you what your property is worth under whatever condition the lender is asking, okay, whether the intended use is fair market value or is it damage value or restoration value. My job is to inform you of that. When I tell you that it's worth $100 and you're like, I'll give you $600 right now, that makes me nervous because I don't know if you can sell it again for $600 later, if that makes any sense. So that was my big thought. Have you seen crazy appraisal contingencies? Have you seen people leaving furniture, moving out early?
On the properties, and I'll use specific examples of our own properties that we've sold. We've had offers with contingencies that say, if it appraises for $244, we'll give you an additional 10. They're selling it for $254. If it appraises only for $244, we'll give you the additional $10,000 cash.
I've seen one where the listing was $329, the offer was $365, and they said that we will. When it appraises, we'll pay up to $25 over asking price. So that would have been $344 that they would have paid up to.
And it sold for $360.
No, I'm sorry.
And
It would have been
$369.
$354. It would have been $354. No, it appraised at $342 or something like that. $340, $345, somewhere in that ballpark.
Comp.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's the thing. I will say this. Historically, this is very good for Arkansas anyways, in the sense that we're growing. There's a lot of change happening. You drive around the city and there's road work everywhere. And everyone knows, or at least people mostly that have a real estate understanding know that road work means expansion. Expansion
Yep.
means growth. Growth means
Well, and then the house,
real
you think
estate
it's a bad
changes.
deal, but then the house next door listed at like $15 a square foot higher.
Well, what happens when
even
you
more
find out-
expensive than this bigger house was, and you look at the pictures online, you're like, this is equivalent. It's not even any nicer, and it got an offer the first day it was on the market.
Or 3 offers. Or
Probably
83
did.
offers.
Yeah. I mean, you sold your house in really good market conditions on purpose, and now I'm selling it again.
I know.
Sorry about that. But it's kind of funny because it's one of those things where, and they even see potential. You see people do things so differently with their property now because they know now is the time. It's also a little concerning though, again, because you have so much happening so quickly. And then in the midst of COVID, when you don't have opportunity to get in to handle the recourse in the same way that you might typically be able to do that. So what about some like exciting things that are going on with you? Because you just mentioned your own properties, and Kendall and I don't do a lot of flipping around town. We mostly just deal with the repercussions of such. But what about you and your better half? What have you guys been up to as far as the flipping and the properties, or what have you found the most joy in doing alongside Jen in this market?
My pride and joy right now is probably my twinsies, is what I call them, at 321 and 323 Rice Street. I had 2 vacant lots, and we took a little bit of architecture that we had stolen from Nashville, Tennessee, and Northwest Arkansas, and something that wasn't I hadn't seen done here really. They're 2-story. Balconies on the upper deck, a big front porch, a big back porch, large living area down, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths up. It's just with a garage in Capitol View Stiff Station, which you don't see a lot. It's just a very, very unique product, and we're just very, very proud of them. They hit the market next week, so here's my plug.
Here we go, and they sound super functional. So
we'll need to get this out before next week then.
Aaron, get to work.
I expect multiple offers. I got a really good listing agent, so
well, I've heard she's all right.
Right.
Here's the funny thing about that. So
I take credit. I don't have anything to do with it except I say, hey, let's move that wall. Let's add a bath to the back, and then I moonwalk out, and she takes care of everything.
If you can moonwalk, we're gonna need to get that on camera.
Yeah.
1.
Well, I got to see what shoes I'm wearing. Yeah, okay. I can make it happen.
All right, I'm in Berks. I can't do it. 2. The thing with this, though, and you already know this from us working together over the years, but when I first started in real estate, Jen was a huge example to me because I would watch her just execute flawlessly all the time. And then you guys had the title company. And so I've learned a lot over the years about watching you guys work through things. And what I've noticed on the other side of what we've dealt with in these past couple of years is through all the changes in the business, you guys continue to maneuver in a different way that adds value to our city. And I think that's something I want to bring up and just express while I have you here, because similar to Kendall, you do a lot of work that's not easy. And sometimes when you talk about the estate planning and stuff, you're dealing with loss. Like you were talking about a case before the show that's just like devastating. You can torture him with that after this as well.
All right.
But there are terrible things that have to go on that you have to be there for. And you and Jen have seen a lot of that over the years. Plus your businesses have changed and grown and moved in together. So can you talk to me a little bit about that, just as far as like, our show is made of entrepreneurs. Our listener base is made of real estate agents and attorneys and people who want to create businesses that execute in markets like this and provide value to their family, hard times and good times. So can you shed a little bit of light on that?
Well, there was a lot of pieces, Jamie, but I'll break down.
You know how I do it.
If I had my gavel, I would have objected to that question.
Thank you.
You cannot object because you do not have your gavel.
I know. I've lost the authority.
I just want you to speak to your incredible experience alongside Jen in this crazy market.
Well, so I married my best friend, and she retired from the banking industry of 25 years, and she had a kind of a little itch to dabble in real estate. And when she started that process, and I believe it was 2013, so probably not too far before you had kind of moved into that sector, she was given an opportunity. It was a startup company, some great people that started that company. She was the first agent they took a chance on. She had never done it before, and she just took it and ran with it.
Understatement of the century.
Yeah, still running fast. She did some stuff different than I've not seen done before. She would, when she couldn't find a product to sell, she'd go create it. She would take a piece of property in a Capitol View Stiff Station, in a Leawood, things that had not really been turned over before, and take it and put her touches on it. And she didn't get enough credit for her volume. Like, I don't know, a couple $1 million, $5, $6, $7 million worth of her product sales before it ever hits MLS. Mm-hmm. People see her work in process. They catch her on her Instagram post, and she sells them up front.
Yep.
And then, Jen, we want to buy your product. So super proud of her.
Yeah. I thought at first that they were just creating a scheme to send all the business to AATC was my thought.
I don't even close all of her deals.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Obviously, her personal deals I get to close, but
I know,
her agent deals I don't get to close. You know how social the title insurance industry is.
I do. I mean, I think about even my time at iRealty was, for me, super valuable because I learned so much while I was there, but I also didn't have any idea, similar to Jen. I didn't know what I was doing. I stepped into an arena from the appraisal background into a real estate background and tried to figure it out. And it was a cool company to grow with because you really learned a lot, but also, like you said, they were just fun to be around, and they gave you a chance, and you're like, here I go.
Right.
I hope you like this.
Well, you were doing it with them because they were doing the same thing.
Yeah, and it was even stepping
Where do we
out.
fit?
Right, and even stepping out, like watching Jen go into flipping property from an agent perspective. Like, again, for me, it was so like, people just didn't do that in our market as it seemed like as readily, as quickly, and efficiently as y'all would do it together. So I think it's kind of fun because the three of us together have some very interesting but different experience, and you guys have kind of a relationship without me, right? I mean, is this the first time you guys have met?
We've done a couple things together, yeah. Again, I don't do that much transaction work because of all the litigation that we're involved in.
Yeah, that, and you don't need any attorney documents because he already has attorney-drawn docs.
That's
for all
right.
his closings.
Probably better than what I could do.
Yeah, but what I do love is these are two of the greatest people, in my opinion, in the real estate market in in Little Rock. And I've had a lot of experience closing deals and dealing with agents in this area. And so what I'm excited about is to talk with our listener base about our two sponsors for this show, starting out with Campbell & Grooms and with American Abstract Title Company will be helping us moving forward as sponsors of the show I Hate Real Estate, and we'll be able to funnel people to you that are interested in hearing more about your respective duties in the industry and also are just wanting to be entertained by these crazy stories that we get to hear from each other about what's going on in this market. So
Jamie, I like to do PSAs.
Yep, here we go. We're going to get a PSA.
And it's an important PSA in closing a transaction because, and if we have time.
You do?
Okay.
We always have time for you, Kendall,
Good.
because it's a legal disclaimer.
Good. Yeah, it is. PSA. So a lot of people read their closing documents. As you know, they sign them. They don't read them. You may explain them to them, give them whatever detail that you can, but you're not walking through line item by line item with people.
Oh, I'm sorry. As fast as he talked, I thought he did. Okay.
People see things. They see affidavit of seller or, contractor's affidavit, whatever it may be. They don't even read it. An important document to me in the closing packet is the closing protection letter. And we had a client one time, you may have been involved with this or not, one of my very first clients actually didn't get a closing protection letter from the title company that he closed at, not your title company. Didn't get the offer. It costs $25 to get a closing protection letter. And I'll let you explain what that protects from.
It protects from the title insurer misappropriating the funds.
Yep.
Not for a wire that's coming to a title company that gets
lost.
Yes,
This
China,
is like a straight up intention.
right, gone.
Right.
Yes, not. It protects from that, and I use this as an example. If I take your money and I go to Oaklawn this afternoon and I put it on number 4 in the 4th race and it doesn't win and you lose that $400,000, your policy protects against that loss. It's the title company.
And that's the interesting thing is I'll tell you the first time I ever heard a closing protection letter described was by Andrew. I think we talked about this on the first podcast. He's like, well, and in case I don't take your money and go to, I said Montana, but he said like the Bahamas. He put it across the table at my client. I'm like, did he just say that?
Our clients,
but it's exactly
our
what
clients'
it's for.
refinance funds got wired to a closing company or an escrow company in California. And that happened to be the day that the guy cleaned out the account, went to Hawaii and said, I'm out. And he had like $8 million. And our client's $1.3 million refinance was a part of it.
Well,
I would assume that was protected under the closing protection letter.
They didn't sign it.
He was not offered a closing
Would it
protection
have been
letter.
protected under the closing protection
Yes.
letter? Okay.
And it was not, everybody acknowledged that it was not offered and that there was no coverage.
And that's his PSA.
And he ended up getting everything that he wanted in the end.
Okay, how about his lender under the state of Arkansas? I think his lender would be required to have a closing protection letter where the money he received from.
My understanding at the time was that they were only required to offer the closing protection letter. It was an optional transaction of whether you wanted to purchase the insurance or not.
I think
and
it
he was
probably
never
was.
offered it, and there was not one in the closing package.
I do not close a transaction at American Abstract and Title Company with a lender involved that does not include a closing protection letter.
And so my PSA is
Close
make sure
with
you
the
have a closing
ATC.
protection letter. I don't care. Yeah, that. But close with a closing protection letter no matter where you close. Because if you don't, it's a 1 in 50 million type of deal. But all of a sudden, my client who's refinancing a $1.3 million transaction finds out 2 months later that he has a $2.6 million mortgage on his house because the refinance funds didn't pay off the original loan. And that's when I get involved.
He's got 2 mortgages.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's not good. Well, and also, I'm sad for him and always get a closing protection letter or just close with American Abstract. So you don't have to worry about that.
He's good now because he called us.
Yeah, he is. Got Campbell and Grooms. So we're good. We got the dream team. But real quick, before we get off here, I have to ask you what you were thinking because, again, I had been in real estate doing other things, and this was never part of the plan initially. And then I moved into the media thing, and I remember giving you a phone call and being like, hey, I'm going to start this show. It's not the Block Talk. It's called I Hate Real Estate. And I remember I told you, it's just because it's a catchy name, et cetera. But it has been something that's been conversed but exciting for me, and I just kind of want to know, like, now that we've convinced you to take part in this, what were you thinking when I first called you and said that? Were you like, she's out of her mind?
Well, I knew that. So
that was a fact.
Thank you. Low hanging there. That was easy.
Sorry. You're welcome.
The name concerned me a little bit because I don't hate real estate for what it's done. Not for what it's done for my family for generations.
Sounds like me.
Same.
Generations
Oh, and I
to
feel the
come.
same way.
Absolutely.
Got to have a good title.
I think the name. If someone asked me what was the talk that you went on, it would be what I love to hate about real estate. I think that's what I would redescribe it as.
Okay. Well, that gives me some insight into the jingle for sure. Number one. And two, the thing is about a catchy name. And that's what you do is you get a catchy name. And sometimes
Fantastic.
And I want people to understand that, like, it's okay to have a healthy hate for it too sometimes, because when you're an agent and you're grinding and you're dealing with maybe some agent who filed a complaint that doesn't have any basis, and now you have to hire some expensive attorney to get you out of it, or you have some client that had an issue with the title company in the past and now you have to prove to them that not all of them are the same. There are things that are difficult about this industry. There are things that happen that are unsundry.
It makes you want to hate it.
It makes you
Exactly
want to
what he
hate it.
just said.
But it's the same for me. You don't get to have the opportunities to live the life that you have with Carrie or with Jennifer or mine with Joey and with our kids and our family, and the opportunities we can afford one another and the changes we can make in our own city based on this medium. So, of course, we all do love it. Public service announcement number 2 for the show. We love real estate, but we do love to hate it when it goes sideways. So I have to say I appreciate you coming on the show. Appreciate you being a sponsor. Kendall, you're going to have to keep putting up with my stuff every week.
Thanks for the invite. I appreciate you very much.
Of course. It's your second time around, so thanks for being a podcast repeater. I appreciate that. So all of you haters, the gavel has not spoken. However, it will speak again next Wednesday morning when we broadcast from the Esplanade, and we will see you then. So remember, for your protection, get a closing protection letter and a home inspection.
That's right.
Am I right?
That's right.
Fake gavel me. 1, 2, 3.
Gavel.
Bye.